Oh No You Didn't by Song Back. Whether on the news or the new organic snacks that your mom bought, you have probably seen one of these signs before. But what is a GMO? Well, GMO stands for genetically modified organisms. These are organisms that have had their characteristics changed through the modification of their DNA. By changing an organism's genome, we can change its characteristics. Any organism could be genetically modified, but laws restrict the creation of genetically modified humans, and the production and distribution of other GMOs are tightly regulated. While our ancestors had no concept of genetics, they were still able to influence the DNA of other organisms by a process called selective breeding or artificial selection. These terms describe the process of choosing the organisms with the most desired traits and mating them with the intention of combining and propagating these traits through their offspring. The repeated use of this practice over many generations can result in dramatic genetic changes to a species. While artificial selection is not what we typically consider GMO technology today, it is still the precursor to the modern processes and the earliest example of our species influencing genetics. So, why are agricultural organisms genetically modified? Well, there are 5 main reasons. First, protection. Second, the environment. Third, supply and demand. Fourth, nutrition. And fifth, the quality. First and foremost is protection. Farmers constantly struggle to protect their crops and livestock from weeds, pests, and diseases. So, these agricultural organisms were genetically modified to be resistant to those conditions. The primary example of modifying genetics for protection is Roundup Ready or glyphosate-resistant plants. Chances are you've heard of Roundup, a common weed killer used by both farmers and homeowners alike. Roundup is a brand name for the herbicide, glyphosate. Glyphosate works by preventing plants from being able to make the proteins they need to survive. Since virtually all plants make these essential proteins the same way, glyphosate affects nearly all plants. Of course, this is a double-edged sword. While Roundup is a great weed killer, its broad-spectrum effects make it a decent crop killer too. That's no good. If our crops aren't resistant to Roundup, can we figure out a way to make them resistant? In fact, the agricultural company Monsanto did that by modifying the crop's genetics. Roundup Ready crops have been engineered to contain a gene from agrobacteria and making them immune to the herbicide. Let's talk about the environment now. As global warming damages Earth more and more every year, it is essential to develop crops that mature faster and tolerate aluminum, boron, salt, drought, frost, and other environmental stressors, allowing plants to grow in conditions where they might not otherwise flourish. Remember the Roundup Ready plants that we just talked about? Those plants are actually a win for both the environment and the farmers. Assuming that farmers only use Roundup at the recommended rates in their weed management techniques, results show that farming practices associated with Roundup Ready crops actually have a lower environmental impact. One reason for this is that they are able to reduce their pesticide use and replace more harmful pesticides with glyphosate. This herbicide is considered relatively non-toxic to the ecosystem because the concentrations that could enter the environment from the recommended applications of the herbicide is usually lower than the minimum concentration for that chemical to be toxic. Another reason Roundup-ready crops result in a new environmental benefit is that farmers no longer have to till their cropland. While tilling has other benefits, its primary purpose is to mechanically destroy weeds present on the land before the crops are planted. However, this comes with a price. Tilling the land loosens the soil, which causes more of it to run off into nearby bodies of water when there's rain or even a strong wind. Soil on a farm plot is different from natural soil in that it contains much higher concentrations of fertilizer and pesticides. The third topic is supply and demand. In agricultural business, one way to increase profits is to reduce costs. Faster growth from altering an animal's genetic material is one way to do that. Furthermore, increase in yield of crops and livestock will provide greater food security, which will benefit the world's growing population. For instance, genetically modified salmon were patented by Canadian scientists who took a gene that regulates growth hormones in Pacific Chinook salmon and a promoter from an ocean trout and introduced them into the genetic structure of an Atlantic salmon. This modifications gave the Atlantic salmon a year-round appetite, enabling it to reach market size faster than other farmed salmon. The fourth reason for genetically modified organisms is for nutrition. Malnutrition is common in third world countries where impoverished people rely on a single crop such as rice for the main staple of their diet. However, rice does not contain adequate amounts of all necessary nutrients to prevent malnutrition. If rice could be genetically engineered to contain additional vitamins and minerals, nutrient deficiencies could be alleviated. Researchers at the Swiss Federal Institute of Technology Institute for Plant Sciences have created a strain of so-called golden rice containing an unusually high content of vitamin A to fix this problem. Lastly, scientists genetically modify organisms to improve the quality. While food quality is something some of us do not even think about in the sense that it is an expected aspect of our foods, others spend a great deal of time handpicking the best fruits and vegetables that have the freshest appearance, most attractive color, and most appealing overall state. Yet, it is the growers who have the challenges of providing the best product possible, one that will sell easily and provide them with an excellent profit for their labor and associated costs. The concept of genetically modified foods is an important one for farmers when it comes to growing the best quality fruits and vegetables. In fact, GM technology can also be applied to livestock, where it could provide leaner animals that have a more pleasing flavor and texture. Tomato is one of the fruits that were genetically modified to make it more aesthetically pleasing. After 5 years of extensive health and environmental testing, Celgene's Flavor Saver tomato became the first food crop to be approved for commercial production by the U.S. Department of Agriculture. These tomatoes were modified to include a DNA sequence that inhibited production of a natural tomato protein, increasing the firmness and extending the shelf life of the Flavor Saver variety. So those were 5 reasons why agricultural organisms are genetically modified. Thanks for watching.